support each other well. For this, you can use websites that calculate bottlenecks. Myth 5. As the resolution increases, the processor usage will rise. Answer: wrong. I've mentioned this in myth 2. As the resolution increases, the graphics card usage will rise, not the processor usage. Thanks to this, the processor can support the graphics card better. For example, the Ryzen 5 5600 with the 4070 Ti can get bottlenecked when you try to play games in 1080p resolution. But when the resolution is raised to 1440p, as some of the load shifts to the graphics card, the processor can support it better. This way, the bottleneck can be reduced. By the way, let me share a little piece of information with you. You can see that some gaming tests performed on newly released processors are being made in 720p or 1080p resolutions. Of course, this isn't because the reviewer only has a 720p monitor. These tests are being done this way because more strain is put on the processor as the resolution decreases. This way, the performance of the processor can be tested better. Myth 6. The more expensive processor will always perform better. Answer: wrong. This completely depends on the usage case for the processor. Some programs can perform differently between Intel and AMD processors due to the way they work or due to the processor architecture. You must know this. Besides this, something else that you must know is that processors are better in some areas than other areas. For example, most Ryzen processors with X3D in their names perform really good in games due to the cache advantage, but they cannot perform as well in other use cases such as 3D rendering. In this case, you must find the most efficient processor for your use case. Besides this, there can be vast differences in temperatures of processors with similar performance. For example, the R5 7600X and R5 7600 show similar performance, but the 7600X tends to get hotter. To add to this, the Ryzen X3D processors are pretty good when it comes to temperatures too, despite also having great gaming performance. Myth 7. Graphics cards from brands like MSI and Asus perform better. Answer: false. Brands take the GPU from manufacturers like Nvidia and AMD, then sell it after customizing stuff such as the card's cooling. Due to this, the GPU is the same across all RTX 4060 cards. There can be differences between the graphics cards of brands like Asus and MSI in terms of cooling performance, design,
Tako i treba, znači Type 64 gdje ti došao tu da se nabiješ.
Listing them all like this might have worried you a little, but the brand is not that important. Unless the card you're planning to buy has any widespread issues or is from a no-name brand, you won't have any issues. Just don't unnecessarily spend more money. A card like the RTX 4060 doesn't really run hot anyways. You don't need to go with an expensive card with special cooling. I have tier list videos about this. If you're interested, you can find it on my channel. Myth 8. Bottlenecks harm PC components. Answer: wrong. In forums and YouTube videos, it said that bottlenecks harm PC components. In contrary to what's said, you don't need to worry. Bottlenecks do not cause damage on the components. And especially if the bottleneck amount is around 5 to 10%, it's hardly noticeable to begin with. If the bottleneck amount is 15% or higher, you might get upset as you couldn't get your money's worth on the graphics card. But besides this, there is nothing to be worried about. Myth 9. The most popular graphics card is the best. Answer: both true and false. As the best-selling graphics card manufacturer today is Nvidia, things get a bit complicated. I need to explain this in a bit more detail. While some graphics cards have good performance in gaming, some may have more performance in other use cases, such as video editing. Nvidia cards give better performance compared to its competitors in areas of video editing and artificial intelligence, thanks to CUDA and TensorRT. Of course, the performance is better, but the price can be higher than its competitors too. On the other hand, in terms of raw performance, AMD graphics cards have better performance compared to their competitors, meaning it provides a good hardware performance without features like DLSS and FrameJet. This makes AMD graphics cards the better option for games like Valorant and CS2, which don't support DLSS. Also, in some countries, AMD graphics cards are really cheap compared to Nvidia graphics cards. Due to this, you must pick your graphics card for your specific use case instead of just picking the most popular option. Actually, it might be a good idea to make a separate video about this.
Baš ljebe, dragi, žuto nije probilo.
Are two different things. Answer: true. These two terms get mixed up often, so I wanted to explain this. VRM is the circuit that relays the power that the processor needs to the processor. The higher phase and ampere rating the circuit has, the more stable and complete it can deliver the required power. If the processor doesn't receive the required power, there will be losses in performance. Similarly, this is important for overclocking enthusiasts too. This isn't important in entry to middle-tier motherboards, but having a good VRM lets the PC run more stable in the future when you decide to upgrade your processor. On the other hand, VRAM is a special kind of memory graphics cards use. The amount of VRAM is important for gaming and fast data processing in professional applications. And as mentioned in the previous myth, you need enough VRAM to play games smoothly in higher resolutions and higher graphics settings. Myth 11. The PCI Express version of the motherboard isn't very important. Answer: both true and false. It's really hard for me to explain this without explaining what PCI Express is. You can think of PCI Express as a highway that connects the graphics cards and SSDs to the PC.
Ajde još jednom,
The
ajde,
wider this
ajde
highway,
izađi.
the more data can be transferred, while the PCI Express version indicates the baseline speeds. Terms like X8 and X16 refer to the number of lanes. For example, let's say a graphics card works as expected in the PCI Express 4.0 X8 lane. If you were to plug this graphics card into a PCI Express 3.0 X8
Tako.
slot, you may experience a decrease in performance. Also, the PCI Express version doesn't prevent you from plugging in and using a component, but it might limit the component from reaching its full potential. We experience this the most in M.2 SSDs. For example, let's say you bought an SSD that can go up to 5 gigabytes per second. If you plug this SSD into a PCI Express 3.0 motherboard, your speed may be capped out as low as 3.5 gigabytes per second. On the contrary, if you plug a PCI Express 3.0 SSD into a PCI Express 4.0 motherboard, you will get the maximum speeds the SSD can offer, but you won't gain any additional performance. If this speed cap isn't an issue for you, the PCI Express version may not be all that important to you. Myth 12. I should definitely avoid dead sockets. Answer: both true and false. The term dead socket refers to a CPU socket that will no longer support new processors. If you want to use your PC for a long time, you should avoid dead sockets. For
Idemo.
example, someone who bought
Kill
an
the
AM5
bitches.
motherboard can upgrade from the Ryzen 7000 series to the 9000 series in the future, meaning that they can upgrade their PC. But if you're on a tight budget, I still think that motherboards with LGA 1700
Ništa da te,
and
da
AM4
te nabijem.
sockets can still be worth buying. As their performances are still enough, they won't create any issues in the short run. Just know that there will no longer be any new processors for these sockets.
15.5, Lakeville, joj jesam nad, ujebem ti sunce, 3700 u sedmici, 3700, da li je to high kaliber ili nije high kaliber? Znači, na vlaku što sam napravio dobru. Bože. Da vidimo da li smo završili referala ili nismo završili referala. Jesmo, završili smo referala sa 50 fucking poena u jednoj partiji. Contract completed.
Because of this, you should check the motherboard's features and if it fits your needs. All right, let's finish the video slowly. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button. If not, feel free to dislike. Stay mysterious until the next video. Take care, and bye.
To mi reci
Today's
sada.
video is going to be a follow-up on our basic guides on laptops and desktops. However, this time the topics that we are going to detail will be more in-depth. Therefore, if you are not interested in computers, the topics we're going to discuss may be a bit confusing to you. So I'd recommend at least checking your own PC to have a basic understanding before watching this video. By the way, if you like this video, I'll share the second part next week. So if you are ready, let's get started. Let's start with CPU namings because they determine if a PC is power or efficiency focused. What are the letters at the end of CPU?